Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we're going to be talking about chisels, and we'd like to thank Leah Stein for liking and sharing the podcast. And January 20th, we're going to have our promotion for Book 13. So between January 20th and January 24th, 2021, you can download a free copy of our 13th ebook on Amazon.
You should say the name.
It's called Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, Book 13. And we'll be coming out with an episode to talk about all the chapters and all the cool stuff in the book. Mm-hmm. During the Stone Age, stone chisels were used to shape furniture, build canoes, skis, and other useful items.
What kind of furniture do you have in the Stone Age?
Just like a square block to sit on, but it was chiseled very nicely. I can't believe that the Stone Age people had skis. I saw some hieroglyphics going back 5,000 years that show people on skis.
You heard of the Ice Age, right?
Yeah, I guess skis would be handy. Ancient people figured out how to create a mortise and tenon joint using chisels to create strong framing for building. Archaeologists discovered some homes in Germany that date back 7,000 years that were built with mortise and tenon joints. The ancient Egyptians and Romans used iron and bronze chisels. When we talked about replacing planks in wood flooring, I mentioned a few methods using a wood chisel, and we got a couple emails asking what type of chisel a homeowner should have. And I've primarily used a 1-inch wood chisel for most of the remodeling projects I've done. It's a good size for putting in a latch for an entrance lock or a deadbolt, for putting in a strike plate plus hinges on doors. And I've used a chisel to clean up half-lap joints on wood gates.
What's a half-lap joint?
That's where you take your corner, or if you're creating a joint, you're going to cut away half of the depth of one piece of wood and then half of the depth of the other piece of wood. You're going to put glue on that surface and then clamp them together. I used a couple screws to hold them in place, and you make a very strong joint. So I've used this type of joint on a couple of gates I made for picket fences, and they turn out really nice.
Are they still standing?
Yes. So what I did for the gates I made is mark the area where I wanted to cut that down by half of the depth. I used a circular saw and made multiple cuts very close to each other. Then I used a hammer and hit those pieces, and it broke away most of the pieces. And then I used my chisel, and I was able to smooth it out and then glue it and screw it together.
Cool.
It's been a while since I shopped for a chisel, so I ran out to a couple of the home centers and hardware stores to see what they carry. At the 2 hardware stores I went to, they carried wood chisels, cold chisels, and mason chisels. At the home centers, cold, C-O-L-D. At the home centers I went to, they had a bigger selection of the wood chisels. They had concrete chisels, floor chisels, mason and brick chisels, cold chisels, and they had an electrician chisel.
Exciting.
For most homeowners doing basic remodeling, a bench chisel is very versatile. Most of the wood chisels I saw had beveled edges, and that beveled edge is going to allow you to work into dovetail joints, corners, and tight areas. The wood chisels and the chisel sets I saw at the home centers and the hardware stores were just marked wood chisel, rather than saying bench or identifying a style.
Okay.
If you're thinking about getting into woodworking and furniture building, you can go online for a selection of specialty wood chisels, and there's quite a few. You'll see things like fishtail, dovetail, mortise, paring, and skew.
What's skew?
Skew, S-K-E-W. This is used with wood turning. You put a piece of wood on a lathe, and it spins the piece of wood, and then you use this chisel against the wood, and you can shape it.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, they've had lathes since the ancient Egyptians, although they had the slaves turning the piece of wood. The basic beveled wood chisel you'll find at a hardware store has a cutting edge at the front of the blade The top of the blade is angled and the bottom of the blade is flat. Most of the chisels I saw had plastic or composite handles. You should compare the packaging when you're shopping. Some only want you to use a wood or a rubberized mallet to strike the chisel, although some will say it can be used with a steel-headed hammer, which is more convenient. And you should look for a steel cap on the end of the chisel, and this is for regular hammers. It's going to help prevent the handle from cracking.
Okay.
There's two types of handles with the wood chisels. A chisel with a tang has a metal shaft coming off the blade, and this gets inserted into the handle. Tang is T-A-N-G. A socket chisel has a hollowed-out cone shape on the bottom of the blade, and the handle is shaped so it gets inserted into the socket. I was on a couple woodworking forums, and if you have a wood chisel with a wood handle, the consensus was a socket chisel is better if you're going to be using a hammer. They're less likely to split the handle. But most of the people on the forums said if you get a chisel with a plastic handle, both types are equally strong. But look for a metal cap if you plan on pounding it with a metal-headed hammer.
Alrighty.
A concrete chisel can have a wide metal blade with a metal handle, and you can use this to shape concrete. Or it can have a long metal handle with a pointed end, and you would use this to break up concrete floors or pavers. You'd use a ball-peen hammer or a small sledgehammer to strike the chisel. And whenever you're doing any of these types of projects, make sure you're wearing safety goggles or safety glasses. Mason chisels and brick chisels have a metal handle and a metal blade, and they come in a range of sizes. They're used to cut down bricks, get rid of excess mortar, shape and break stone and brick. Cold chisels will cut into metal softer than the metal the chisel's made of. They're used to cut off rivets, nuts, or bolts, and they can be used to groove or shape metal. An electrician's chisel has a metal head and handle. It's used to trim and shape drywall, plaster, and wood for electrical boxes. Although I've never seen an electrician use one.
I've never heard of such a thing.
A floor chisel looks like a masonry chisel. It has a metal head and handle, and this is used to remove tongue and groove flooring, prying up flooring, and scraping. It has a thin cutting edge where it can cut into the wood, where a concrete or mason chisel is going to have a thicker edge.
Okay.
A common project for a wood chisel is putting in the mortise for an entrance lock or a deadbolt, or I guess just a regular doorknob if it's an interior door. The most common latch for a doorknob or deadbolt is 1 inch by 2 1/4 inches. So if you have a door that doesn't have the mortise or the holes in it, you would drill a 2 1/8 inch hole through the side of the door for the lock, and then a 7/8 or 1 inch hole through the edge of the door for the latch. You'd put your latch through the hole on the edge of the door and use a pencil to mark the outline of the mortise that you want.
Okay.
You remove the latch and use your chisel along the inside of that line you made. You want the beveled edge facing towards the center or towards the hole. You want to tap the chisel into the wood just the depth of the latch. It's only going to be about 1/8 of an inch or so, and it's better to undercut and then go deeper if you need to. Once you have the outline cut, you're going to use your 1 inch or smaller chisel and work from the top to the bottom of your outline, making cuts the depth of the latch, so only about 1/8 inch or so deep, and you're going to space them about 1/8 of an inch apart. The more cuts you make, the easier it is to break those pieces away. Once you've made all your cuts from the top to the bottom, you can scrape over the area with your chisel and break away some loose pieces, and that's going to open up an area where you can get your chisel in there, and you're going to tap it at an angle and start cutting out all those pieces.
Okay.
You can start with the bevel side up on your chisel and a hammer, lightly tapping the pieces to pull them free, and then by hand you would flip the chisel over, have the bevel side down, and scrape out all the excess wood, get it all the same depth, work from the top to the bottom and then side to side. You really want to take your time. You can get it very smooth if you have a sharp edge. And you want to do this part by hand so you don't accidentally break out the edges of the mortise.
Okay.
You would use the same technique to install the strike plate on the door frame.
Okay.
If your latch has rounded corners, you can use a smaller chisel. So I like a 1-inch chisel because it's the width
Me too.
of these. But if you have rounded corners, then a smaller chisel works better and you can really shape a rounded corner.
Mm-hmm.
For door hinges, you're going to create your outline using the hinge and marking the wood with a pencil. Use the chisel to cut the outline, bevel side towards the center of the mortise. Then create a series of cuts from the top of where you're going to be cutting it out, and you want this the depth of the hinge. And the more marks you make or the more cuts you make, the easier it is to remove those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
With the door hinge, you're going to have one side that you can chisel in from the edge to clean out the pieces. You would use the chisel with the beveled side up and the flat side against the wood, and you can lightly tap the chisel with a hammer. Once you clean out the main pieces, then by hand with the bevel side down, you can shave it smooth from top to bottom. And then if you're working from the side, you can have it flat side down and shave it. So this is called paring, and you're just shaving off thin pieces of wood to even it all out.
Okay.
For rounded corners on hinges, you can use the chisel to make your multiple cuts from the top to the bottom, starting where it's the width of your chisel or where it's not rounded. Mm-hmm. And then you can use a smaller chisel to shape the wood, or you can come in at an angle and work multiple cuts around that circular area. The key with this is to be patient, just take your time. Mm-hmm. And then if you cut your mortise too deep, you can just cut a piece of cardboard and use that as a shim to build it up. And that's what professional carpenters use.
Okay.
Cardboard. When you're comparing chisels, ones that come with protective caps are convenient. Mm-hmm. It's going to protect the tool, other tools in your toolbox or tool bag, and your hands.
That's smart.
Many chisels aren't sharp out of the package, and as you use your chisel, you're going to need to keep it sharpened. A sharp edge is going to make it much easier to use, and you're going to get much better results. Mm-hmm. You can use a belt sander, a grinder, or a sharpening stone. A sharpening stone is good for a chisel because you want to keep that back flat.
Right.
With a stone, you would hold the chisel bevel side down against the stone and follow the factory angle. You're going to rub it forward and backward and keep feeling the back of it. When you have a uniform burr on the flat side, mm-hmm. now you're going to flip it over perfectly flat against your stone and move it back and forth to remove that burr, and you're going to get a very sharp edge.
Cool. Some
top-rated chisels come from Stanley, Stanley, DeWalt, capital D-E, capital W-A-L-T, Work Pro, W-O-R-K, capital P-R-O, Narex, N-A-R-E-X, Buck Brothers, B-U-C-K, and Von Haus, V-O-N, capital H-A-U-S. Some top-rated sharpening stones come from Lansky, L-A-N-S-K-Y, Smiths, S-M-I-T-H-S, and Sharpal, S-H-A-R-P-A-L.
Do you have anything else to add?
A 1-inch beveled wood chisel is a good basic tool, and the 3-piece sets with 1/2-inch, 3/4, and 1-inch wood chisels are great for making the mortise for locks, strike plates, and hinges. And a wood chisel is also good for removing a wood plank from flooring, scraping, and shaping wood.
You're probably not going to use a chisel that often, but it's nice to have in your toolbox because it makes the project easier.
Yeah, absolutely. For projects like this, unless you have like a router or a specialized tool, a chisel is just a great tool. And I've used chisels, I've beaten up a few. So I've always carried a couple old chisels and kept a couple old chisels that got beat up for scraping and pounding and chopping. So it's not bad to have an inexpensive one too that you can beat up.
Right. Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you could subscribe to that as well.
You can download our ebooks, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, books 1 through 13 on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Cindy on Twitter at FixItCohost, and you can follow us on Instagram, Fixit Home Improvement.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.